All right, so today we're going to read a book about George Washington Carver. You ever heard that name before?
Yes.
Maybe? Okay. So, by looking at the cover of this story, what do you think he was interested in? Think about it. What do you think he was interested in? I want you to talk with a partner. See what you think. How do you know?
What?
What's your partner about?
He's not on $1 bill.
Not George Washington on the dollar bill, George Washington on Harvard.
He don't want the $1 bill.
Maybe he was
I saw him on $1 bill.
Is he like brown?
He is, yeah.
So he got a haircut. He got a haircut.
Okay, look up this way. I want to see what y'all think. Oh, my turn to talk. Thank you. I want to know what y'all think he's interested. But first, Amora and Jakai and I were talking, and this is not George Washington like on the dollar bill. This is George Washington Carver. They're two different people, and we're going to learn more about him today. But I didn't want y'all to be confused. It's not George Washington, the president. Okay?
He got a haircut. Did he got a haircut?
I don't know if he got a haircut. Okay, so can somebody raise their hand and tell me what do you think he's interested in and why? Michelle, what do you think? Plants. What do you think? Why do you think that? He's holding a plant. I think so too.
And the plants all around him.
Yes, that is such a good observation, Lauren. So yes, George Washington studied plants and especially peanuts, and we're going to learn about
Peanuts?
peanuts. Yes, peanuts are a plant.
It's so nuts.
Peanuts are
Peanuts grow in the ground, and
Why do you call them peanuts?
Oh, I'm talking. Okay. You know what peanuts are, but it's like peanut butter. So he found multiple ways to use peanut butter.
Why do we call them peanuts?
Why do we call them peanuts? I
Yeah.
don't know.
'Cause they
Maybe
look like-
we could look it up afterwards.
How about their nuts too?
Are you done? Thank you. Okay. So George Washington Carver's life was not easy, and we're going to learn about that here. He was born a slave, and it was hard for him to get a good education. Okay. So this is a picture book about him, and it is called A Picture Book of George Washington Carver by David A. Adler, illustrated by Dan Brown. Okay. So before we start, this story is a biography. Biography. Have you heard of that word before?
Yes.
You have? Amora, what do you think a biography is?
A biography is like a word, a book, a word. And then, a biography is like something that a picture and a word they tell you what it's all about.
Okay, so
It talks about someone's life.
that is right, Axel. So if we look at the word
Biography.
that is not if we look at the word
You know how to spell that?
biography, I do know how to spell it.
I didn't know how to write
Bio means life.
Biography means tell.
Bill.
And graph means told.
Biography. I said biography.
No, but a graph
Let.
is like writing. So just like Axel said,
That meant nothing.
it would be writing about a person's life. So this book is going to be about George Washington Carver's life. Okay? So, and before I start, I do want to go over our vocabulary word. Okay?
Yes.
So, we are going to see the word considered. What word?
Consider.
Consider. Okay. So, consider means to judge. I consider all of you to be good boys and girls. That means that I judge you to be good. So you could use the word too. You could say, I consider math to be an interesting subject. Or you could say, I consider Angel to be a good friend, right? Yeah, you can use the word. What word?
Consider.
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 All right.
Everybody say consider.
You've already said it. Okay.
Everybody
So, as I read,
Yeah.
Y'all need to be looking out for details because later I'm going to ask you to write about it.
Do you read good?
You heard me read before, but we'll
And
see.
she's a baby.
Ready? All right.
Got a baby.
George Washington Carver was born a slave. He was never sure of his birth date, just that it was in 1864 or early 1865, near the end of the Civil War. He was born on the Missouri farm of Moses and Susan Carver, where his mother Mary was a slave. How do you think George Washington Carver felt about not knowing his birthday? I want you to think about it. How would you feel if you didn't know your birthday? What do you think, Maria? You would feel sad? Yeah, it's like a little part of you and you don't
Consider
know.
probably. Why is the kid like?
Those are just Danny's notes.
Oh.
Yes,
Next
Eli, what do you
one.
think?
I think I will be so mad.
You would be mad? I think I would be too.
I know. I would be happy.
You would be happy if you didn't know your birthday?
Mine
would be.
is six. Mine is six.
Alright, we're gonna move on.
I would be happy.
Eyes forward. George hardly knew his mother. When he was an infant, raiders kidnapped him and his mother and took them to Arkansas. A neighbor found George and brought him home, but he didn't find Mary. Young George Washington Carver never saw her again. George's father was a slave too, but George never met him. His father worked on a neighbor's farm and was killed in an accident around the time George was born. George and his brother James were raised by Moses and Susan Carver. The Carvers were good to the boys. George called Mr. Carver Uncle Mose. Okay, so how do you think George and his brother felt to live with a different family?
He a god.
Oh, think about it.
He a god.
Those are the kidnappers?
Cassandra, what do you think? Yes. Would it be kind of weird to live with a whole nother family?
Are those the kidnappers?
These
Yeah.
are the kidnappers.
What is
yeah.
because they killed them. Kidnappers kidnapped.
They kind of took him away from his home.
Yeah,
It would be pretty scary.
I'll just look at them. I'll pop their eyes.
Okay.
I'm a killed their mom.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to the next page.
It's a
Okay.
girl.
George was not a strong boy. He wrote later that his body was in constant warfare between life and death. The Carvers did not make him work hard on the farm. He fed the animals and helped Susan Carver around the house. He had plenty of time to swim and explore the nearby woods. George had his own little garden. He wrote later, "I wanted to know every strange stone, flower, insect, bird, or beast. And many are the tears I have shed because I would break the roots or flower off some of those pets." But he hid his garden in the brush because it was considered foolishness in that neighborhood to waste time on flowers. Okay, this one might be a little harder, but I want you to think, why would he call the flowers his pets?
Jojo Washington, he's different.
Think about it. He's different.
Yeah, we got 10.
Axel, why would George Washington Carver consider the flowers his pets?
Because he liked them so much.
He did like them so much. I think that's a good point. Amora, what else do you think?
Because he thinks them those and those are his pets because he really loves them and he feeds animals with the seeds and he thinks that they're their pets because they grow like pets and they eat and they drink like pets and they eat like pets too.
Yes. So he did. He took care of the flowers kind of like you would take care of a pet. And also, just like Axel said, he really did love them a lot. But also, listen up. Do you think he was lonely?
No.
I think he might have been a little lonely.
Because his mom died and his dad died on accident.
He was living with a different family and he didn't have his mom and dad around anymore. And so I think
He still was with the kidnappers?
he was with a new family.
That's
Because his mom and his dad died. But
Right.
his dad
Okay.
died on
Jakai, I want you to sit on your bottom so
Yeah,
your friends
no,
can
I'm
see.
Asian.
Okay. The Carvers wanted him educated the same as white children. They taught me to read, spell, and write just a little. George needed to know more. His only book was a Webster's Elementary Spelling Book. He read it so often he knew it by heart. But that book had few answers for him. When George was 12, he went to a school for African American children in nearby Neosho. There he lived with Mariah and Andrew Watkins, a black couple. He paid for his room and food by helping around the house.
Huh? So he's alive.
His Aunt Mariah was a nurse, and remember, he just called her his aunt, okay? So he's living with the new couple.
He's still alive.
Okay. His Aunt Mariah was a nurse. George learned from her which plants and herbs cure illnesses. She also taught him the value of time. Even during school recess, he had to run home to help Mariah with the laundry. There was no time for play. Do you think George missed having time to play?
No, he got to do
Oh, I
homework.
want you to think in your head and not call out, okay? Ela, what do you think? Do you think he missed having time to play? I think he might have. He was doing laundry during recess. Let's think about this. Y'all just came back inside from recess. What if you had to leave recess to go help your parents with laundry? You didn't get to play with your friends outside.
He got to do homework.
You had to fold laundry instead. That would be pretty boring, right?
Yeah.
No time to be with your friends.
I know.
What do you think?
He got to do
They're making everybody's making food.
Yeah, they're looking at plants here because he said that his aunt taught him what plants cure illnesses.
I got
Okay, no, we're moving on. Thank you.
My mom brings me extra tips for that.
Why?
The teacher in the Neosho school did not know how much more than George. After less than a year there, George felt he needed to move on. He found a family on its way to Fort Scott, Kansas, almost 100 miles away, and he hitched a ride. Have y'all heard of the state Kansas?
No.
Yes.
Have you? Okay, well, I want you to look up at this map up here, okay? So,
Kansas.
yes, we are over here in Georgia. This is Kansas over here, kind of in the middle.
My
Okay.
grandma took me there before.
Okay, well, just so y'all know where it is now, you can picture where Kansas is. Okay? So that is where George Washington Carver.
And I went to Texas, Tennessee.
In Fort Scott, George went to school, worked in a nearby grocery, and did laundry for people staying at the Wilder House, a
The
hotel.
kidnappers.
He lived with a blacksmith and his family and helped out there too. Okay. Do you think that George was lazy or hardworking?
Hardworking.
Okay, who can raise their hand and tell me how they know? Shannon, how do you know that he was hardworking? What are some of the things that the story has talked about that he did? Nope, Shannon's turn.
He was hardworking because he was.
Do you want me to read the sentence
I
again?
know.
Oh, Jaden, what do you think?
Maybe because he was a dog.
Okay, so he was growing up. You think he was lazy or hardworking?
No. I think he was lazy.
Oh, Jaden thinks he was lazy. Okay. Oh, more sit down. I'll look for somebody quiet. Chelsea S.
Hardworking
Why do you think so?
because he's helping the laundry.
He's doing the laundry. That's right. He's doing the laundry. He's working at the grocery store. He's helping out the people at this hotel.
Maybe.
I think so too.
He's trying to get
No, okay.
He's falling down.
Okay, we'll fix it in a little bit. Thank you.
He's heavy.
Here you go. Those were
Miss,
kidnapped.
that's
Alright.
heavy. He's heavy.
Okay, I'm going to read the next page, and I need you to sit down so you can hear what I'm going to read.
That's him.
Alright. In March 1879, in Fort Scott, a mob of masked white men pulled a black prisoner out of jail, tied him up with a rope, and dragged him for 5 blocks. The prisoner was hanged and later burned. George Washington Carver witnessed that lynching and quickly left Fort Scott. The ugly memory of that night haunted George for the rest of his life.
But he got burned in fire?
He did not. He saw that a prisoner got burned. Yes. So,
What does burn mean?
Or they.
Burn means they fire.
What do you think that?
He got burned. He got burned by a fire. Yes, I know. That's
So
scary,
they
isn't it?
So they threw him in the fire and he dead?
Yeah,
And he
I know. So it's pretty dangerous in Fort Scott.
If my mom did that when she had her baby, I would be
I know.
mad.
I know.
Nope.
I know.
I will not respond to you for calling out.
I'm going to
Why
fly.
those carry them?
Okay, sit like a scholar. Thank you. Okay, so it's pretty dangerous at Fort Scott. Do you think that it was do you think it was a good decision to leave?
No.
I think so. There's lots of scary stuff happening. Yes, you.
I'm okay.
Oh no. Eddie and Shannon. Sit down.
Let's see something.
No, we're gonna see what happens next. Okay.
What about the question?
I did. I asked you. Okay. He went to Aloud, Kansas. Remember Kansas?
Yeah.
It's still alive.
From there, he went to Powell, Kansas, and then to Minneapolis, Kansas, where he graduated from high school. Carver still had what he called a thirst for knowledge. In 1885, he applied by mail and was accepted to Highland University. But when he arrived to begin his studies, he was told that he could not attend the school because he was black. Okay, can y'all think about the phrase, had a thirst for knowledge? What do you think that means? You have to raise your hand, okay? Axel, what do you think that means?
That he was smart.
Okay, he was very smart, but if you have a thirst for knowledge, that means that you want to learn more. You want to keep going to school to learn more and more.
I thought he was dead.
No.
He's still alive.
Okay, you need to listen very closely because this is the last page before you do your written response.
He's still alive.
Okay. George Washington Carver changed his plans. He became a farmer and bought land farther west. He built a one-room sod house made with walls of thick chunks of grassy dirt and a roof made of tar, paper, and dirt.
Still alive.
He planted vegetables, studied art, and made friends.
He's still alive.
Yes, he's still alive. He's not the one who got burned. He saw a prisoner get burned, and that's why he left Fort Scott. Yeah, no, he is safe. He went to school. Thank you. Let's not look for them anymore, okay? Yes, this is the house that he built, the one-room sod house. It's kind of like the one-room cabin that Abraham Lincoln built. Remember when we learned about that?
Oh, yeah.
It had a dirt floor. There wasn't much to it.
There's one under your leg.
And one
Oh
of those,
my
okay.
God.
Okay. So George has been very busy working and going to school. And now the author says he has a house, a garden, and friends. Which do you think is the most important to him? Do you think the garden, the house, or his friends is most important? Okay, Jaden, sit
I
down.
think the garden.
Okay, Jaden thinks the garden is most important to him. Why do you think so? Why do you think? Because I think that's a good idea. Why do you think so?
Because
That's easy.
that he's help you be strong.
Okay. Did you talk about how much you like plants?
Let me see.
Right.
Yeah.
Axel?
I think his home because where could he sleep?
Okay. Yes.
He friends.
Okay. All right. Well, good. Okay. So next we are going to make a timeline.
Oh,
That's not wrestling, right? A wrestle like this.
Oh, face forward and show me that you're ready.
No.
No.
Oh.
Okay. I cannot get the board to work. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Hey, guys.
Put down your phone.
Where'd it go?
It fell down.
Oh.
It fell down.
No.
And then throw it.
Sit down.
Jaden?
It's okay, it's okay.
I
Okay.
didn't touch, I just doing this.
Okay, sit like a scholar and show me that you're ready. Because we're going to make a timeline.
Get off of it. She's here.
Okay. We are going to make a timeline. Okay. So, first,
Timeline
yes, a timeline is when you
has like lots of answers.
lots of different events that happen in a person's life. Okay, so I'm gonna write the first one. Jakai, face forward so you can help me out. Okay. So George was born a slave.
George was born a slave.
What is a slave?
George was born with a slave.
And how about we put his mother died and
Jakai. Okay. So Amora says next his parents died. Okay.
His parents died.
That's sad.
I didn't think parents
That
died.
is sad.
Really sad. My parents died. I would not.
Okay, can you think what happened next? What happened
Oh,
after his
he
parents
cried.
died? Raise your hand.
Why?
He was with another.
He
He wasn't another.
Oh, Ela, what happened next?
That's not feeling that.
Then he went to live with the other family. That is right.
Like his family?
God,
Oh, no. If this was family.
Who can do 102 push-ups?
And his aunt was a nurse.
That is right. Let's think of big important events. What happened after he lived with another family?
He helped his mom and dad died and he had no.
Okay, I like what
Are his pets.
he became super interested in plants. Why don't you write that?
He became super interested.
He
Push it. Push it.
loves plants.
I got them.
That's like 10. 10th grade. Even
Okay.
number 10 over there.
Maria, what happened after that? What do you think? He started school.
He
Yeah.
went to Michael Jr.
Like white people.
Michael Jr.
He started school.
Yeah.
Okay, stop calling out. What did he do after he went to school?
They teach
Axel.
he got a prisoner get burned.
Okay, he went to Fort Scott, right?
And
So
he
what
saw
was
a
that?
prisoner get burned.
I'm gonna go right there.
How about we
Right
say he saw a
there.
prisoner get burned?
He went to Fort Scott.
And you can give me
And then he saw
We'll say, but he left soon after, okay? Because he wasn't there that long.
because somebody got burned.
Right.
He was scared about somebody getting hurt.
Hi. Jack.
Okay, and what is the last thing that the book told us that he did?
That he
Yeah, no, raise your hand. Maria.
he built his own house.
He built his own house. Who remembers what it was made of? Shannon?
Wood.
Wood? No, not wood. Chelsea?
Bricks.
Not bricks. He didn't have all that material.
I know.
Cassandra?
Grass.
200.
Grass, right, sod, grass, dirt. It wasn't made out of expensive.
I thought it was made all grass. Dirt. I thought. No. He made. You were right.
200.
Okay. So, okay, face forward because I'm going to tell you what your written response is about, okay? So, now,
1, 2, 3.
I'm going to whisper so you have to listen. Jakai? Okay. Wait, just a second. I'm going to give you instructions. Okay, so for your written response, you're going to get your journal. Not yet. When you get your journal, you are going to draw a picture of George Washington Carver and his secret garden, and then you are going to have to describe it. You're going to have to write about the secret garden, okay?
Imagination.
Yes, you have to, you imagine what George Washington Carver's garden was like, okay? So,
No.
table
No, it's
1,
not.
I want you to use your marshmallow toes and go back to your seats and get out your writing journals.
I mean,
Table 2, tiptoe back to
why do you keep holding my hand, boy?
You want it.
But you already, you got there.
table